hello and welcomes from myself, a little bit about the agenda. So we'll be starting with Bill Love from NDTO that will be sharing really where this all started, and they'll be joined by Sally from NHS England. Then we've got an opportunity to really go into really what small support organisations are, and Dave will be doing that. And then we'll be really thinking about it from that kind of personal perspective. What does it mean for people and families? And I'm really delighted that Sam is here, and Sam is joined by two family members, and that's Debbie and Gillian. And it's really great to always remember that there's people behind this process. And then we're going to be going on to Mike, who's going to be talking about like some evaluation. There's a lot of content that we'll be going through, Mike and Nick. I'm going to try to hold us to time because I think time's really important. And then we'll wrap up with some closing remarks. And we encourage everybody to, after this session, to really share the video with a contact or somebody in their network, because it's really important that we get out there into the wider world what's really important about the small support movement and what a difference it can make to people like us. So I hope everyone is here for the right session. We're going to get started, and I'm going to go to Bill and colleagues. Bill.
Thank you, Isaac, and I will try and be mindful of your point about keeping to time. Where did it start? I think it's only recently that I realized that for me as an individual, it started with seeing two generations of people in my family institutionalized in wildly inappropriate institutions. But for us as NDTI, it started with failure, really, and looking at failures in the world. We kept seeing institutions that were abusing people, and we have a view that over about 20 or 30 years, there were lots of institutions where people were inappropriately placed. I'd argue we've been inappropriately placing people in institutions for 700 years, but really it started thinking about people who were connected around transforming care. And what we saw was people being placed in institutions. We saw their lives declining in those institutions. We saw abuse. We saw a lack of community connection. We saw costs spiraling. And frighteningly, we saw the next wave of people who were going to be institutionalized. What we saw was providers who kept saying, we can do better, we can get better, we can change our services to support people. We saw costs increasing. We saw lives declining, and we saw local commissioners developing market development plans that were based on an idea of services that didn't meet people's needs. So in combination with some colleagues at NHSE, and Sally's going to come in a minute, we started looking, and we wanted to find people who didn't just say they got it right, who could actually show they got it right. And we found a small number of organizations who were committed to the person, who were absolutely committed to people having a life in the community. Organizations who didn't exist to provide a huge range of services, but who existed just to support people who otherwise have been or were at risk of being institutionalized, and who were there for people who had quite large support packages. What those services had in common was really, really strong principles based on the principle of individual planning, based on the principle of community, above all, based on human rights, but importantly, also reflecting on providing value for money. Sally.
Hi, my name's Sally Anderson. I am part of NHS England's national team, and I work on the learning disability and autism programme, and my portfolio is around developing good community support for people with learning disability and autism. So I'm just going to pick up quickly from where Bill has just left off, and that's the thing that really resonated for me from what Bill said there is that concept of failure. us as an NHS, or in the system, like Bill and small supports, NDTI, and lots of us around, continue to see that in our system the community support really wasn't as it should have been. A lot of it was commissioning the same types of services to get the same types of outcomes. And I'm sure most of you are aware that in 2017, NHS England, along with ADAS and system partners, we produced the Building the Right Support policy document. And behind that was the key aim that we supported this group of people to lead really good lives in the community and outside of these institutions. NHS England has, for the last, I'm just trying to think how many years now, probably 8-9 years, have put an awful lot of guidance into the system. We've put an awful lot of money into the system. And we still see that so many areas have got so far to come in terms of supporting people well. And, we hope that with the new NHS long-term plan that there will be the shift towards, or the concerted shift towards, from hospital to community, and that prevention, we'll hopefully start to see some improvements. But we sort of carry on, but try. And I suppose for us, what our relationship with NDTI has been about 6-7 years now, and we've commissioned NDTI to sort of roll out on our behalf the small supports program. And why did we do it? I suppose, why did we do it? We did it because it was different. It was innovative. It was different to what all commissioners have traditionally commissioned and providers have provided. Those were big block contracts, and same for everybody, regardless of your circumstances. You'll get the same package of care and same type of care. So we were really impressed with the approach that NDTI put forward with regard to small supports. And I think over the last 6-7 years, we've worked together with NDTI, have supported so many areas to develop really good care and support for people in a very person-centered way. And I think most importantly, we have witnessed a body of evidence being brought together. So we are now really sure that this is a model that works. We're sure that it's a model that delivers person-centeredness. We're sure that it delivers really good outcomes for people, and importantly too, it offers really good value for money as well. So we are really keen that this type of very person-centered, impactful care and support offer becomes mainstream and widespread. So we're really happy to have been involved in the last 6 years, and we continue to support and advocate for this approach at a national level.
Thanks, Sally. That was really, really powerful. I just wanted to double check with Bill. Anything you wanted to add, Bill?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
So if we could all show, I'm going to try to do this, be very smart now. So lots of appreciation, lots of heart, Sally, when you were talking about nods, and really important kind of, here, how we've got reached here, and not forgetting that people have had those really difficult experiences. And we're going to now be moving on. And I really love that we're doing a bit of a journey of kind of sort of where this all started and why it all started. So we've heard from Bill and Sally, and the importance of centering kind of people lived experiences in that. What is a small support organisation? We're going to hear from Dave and Nick, and really kind of hear like what it can really enable people to achieve. So I think Dave is going to go first, then going to hand over to Nick. So yeah.
Yeah, I've got Dave and I've got a bit of a script here, Isaac. So I'll pitch in and then I'm going to ask Dave some questions. I think I met Dave the first time just after I started my job. I went up and spent some time with him, his team, and a few people who he support. And it was like I very quickly realized I got the right job. Dave, if you'd just like to introduce yourself and maybe tell us all why you decided to take the step and set up positive support for you in Middlesbrough.
Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Dave Barris. I'm the Chief Exec of Positive Support for You. We've been a small support operating for more than 15 years now, based in Middlesbrough and operating across the northeast of England and up into Northumberland as well. Yeah, I before that I have a former life in local authorities as a senior social services manager. And originally a learning disability nurse for 20 years. But I was a senior commissioner in a local authority and had a service for learning disabilities and autism. And I was making compromises every day. I was offering services which were the lowest common denominator. It was a lot of expediency in what we were able to offer. And I was increasingly dissatisfied with that. And I knew really I enjoyed the sort of work that I do now most, really, in terms of working with people with bigger reputations and getting really importantly getting things right for them. So where I started, I actually went to Southwest Scotland. I went to see Doreen Kelly, a much valued colleague who was operating in Kilmarnock. I've never been to Kilmarnock before in my life, but that was an experience. I went to see Doreen's services and was blown away by them. I actually went down to Stevenage as well to see Martin Nicholas, who was operating a similar small support organisation, and knew this was the right thing to do. It was a no-brainer for me. So really, that was the start of the journey for me, Nick. It was going to see people who had already made that brave leap.
Maybe Dave, there's a quote that I use, and I always credit to you, although you might credit to somebody else, that you talk about no compromise. It's no compromise on what works, and the moment we compromise is the moment we start to fail someone. How that kind of quote links to what you found when you visited Martin, Doreen, and what it actually means a bit more practically when you're supporting people at Positive Support for You.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely vital part of what we do, really, and I think everyone in small supports will understand this because the minute we compromise, and this has happened to us, this happened to me as someone who's worked in this area for 35 years. I've been involved in things which have gone horribly wrong, and that's had a terrible impact on people's lives in the past before we did this small supports approach, because we've compromised on where the person lives, who they live with, the house, who provides their support, what access they have to friends and family, and we get fundamentals like that wrong, and then wonder why things go wrong for people. So we have to start from the top and say we're not going to compromise on being person-centered. And it's genuinely, everyone says they're person-centered. I would challenge that. I think person-centeredness starts with that planning, starts with working with the person and their family, building up that relationship, and the relationship is everything. So that what that lack of compromise means is get from those conversations is finding the place where the person wants to live, with the people they want to live with, often nobody else, because that might reflect where they've come from, but sometimes not. But most of the time, it's supporting people to get a house which has some security, which becomes their home, where they want to live, and how that works, and gives them the best opportunity to succeed. Then it's about matching staff and people who are co-producing and taking part in helping to choose staff who are able to fit into their lives and work alongside them and build relationships with them. And if we do that right, I mean, we had our staff awards last week, and we had it's really nice giving out 10-year service awards to people who've worked alongside people in support for more than a decade. And that's quite a positive experience for me to have. But it's a great experience for the people themselves who value people. How can you put a price on that sort of relationship where people have lived alongside each other for more than a decade and work through their changing lives, their aging, their situations changing, and all the rest of it. and people are still there. So I think there's a huge amount of that in terms of making sure you're genuinely committed to the person-centeredness and you don't compromise on it. And the other thing I would say that is a characteristic I think is common and from my wider experience with NDTI now in helping other areas set up organisations, it's visible leadership. It's people who lead from the front, and that relationship about having someone as a leader in the organization. I don't know a successful small supports organization where people, I know the people that we support, I know their families, I know every member of staff that works for me. I couldn't have said that when I worked for social services and managed a great big department. And that's not a criticism of social services, it's a different model. But in our world, people know who I am. If they have a problem, they can come to me, and my other senior managers, and we all work together. And I think that accessibility and visibility is really important for the person that's supported, for the family, and for staff who we ask to do quite difficult support roles, sometimes on their own on a one-to-one service out in the community, and it's making sure people are backed up in that respect.
Yeah, I think that there's something for job description. Every small support person I know who's leading a small support organization, I don't know if it's quite the right words, but it's stroppy, stubborn, opinionated, a bit of trouble, disruptor, and it's that sort of person that it takes to stand up for people. Um, there's two bits, Dave. It was last just thinking about how swiftly to capture the characteristics of small support. But one of the things is there's something about never walking away from people, and it's that stickability. And then within that, there's obviously how you build a team. But if you just want to kind of comment on that, that we never walk away.
I mean, we set out to do some work. Our small sports organisation in Teesside was born out of a failure in commissioning that was perceived by, and good local commissioning. I had a joint commissioning, I should say, at that time to resolve issues around people with a forensic label, whatever that meant at that time. But these were people who, you would have to expect that because of people's histories, the trauma in their lives, the experiences that they'd have, that you wouldn't necessarily, everything wasn't going to go as smoothly as you might hope. So, if we start off from that point, why would we suddenly be saying, "Oh, we can't cope with this"? If somebody's having some difficulty in adjusting to their new life, the new opportunities that they're having, think they might have a dip in their mental health, all sorts of things can happen to people along the way. So I think part of small supports has always been because of the strength of the relationship that you build, because of the commitments that come out of that and the trust that's formed. I think we have to go the extra mile. And I know that the team of staff that work around the person, if you've worked with someone for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you have an extra level of commitment beyond your job description about the relationship in terms of helping that person through thick and thin. If I'm putting it in those terms, and I think that not walking away is really important, and helps people feel safe, and once people have had a blip and things don't go, and we work through that together and we come out the other side, it's even stronger. So that commitment's so important.
It's a support team saying you matter to us, you matter to me, and that's such a big message. Dave, I know positive support for you's got a life, it's carrying on, and it's also looking to the future. Do you want to just say a last couple of words, I guess, about where the organization is now and what it's
absolutely
hoping to look to?
It's interesting because, I mean, we've got a great record of work with some people we supported now for many years. Interestingly, the adult commissioners are not supplying referrals to us for the type in our locality, and we're doing some work around that in the northeast through small support. So, I'm hoping that situation will improve. If we stand still, we'll fall over. I've always had that view as an organisation. So the changes that I'm currently working on, we're developing children's services now alongside our adults, so that we are working towards Ofsted registration as well as CQC, which I always said I'd never do, but here we are. And really, that's about recognising we've had we've seen the negative experiences around transition for some of the people we work with, And had we been involved earlier, I think we could have worked the other side of the transition boundary and made that experience at least better. I can't think we couldn't have done other than that. And we're working with 2 local authorities in Teesside at the moment to develop that as an offer. So initially as outreach, and then we're working towards the small supports principles being applied to younger people. And the other big change at the moment is I'm working on a governance change. We're a not-for-profit, we're a community interest company as we stand, and I'm in the process of making a transition to a charitable incorporated organisation. Part of that's about a change of attitude. About 15 years in, we're a different organisation. Part of it's about 5 years' time as a succession plan for new leadership to take the organisation forwards for us.
Well, thanks, Dave. There is a question I've seen popped up, which may be for you, Dave. And I'll just go with it if that's all right, Isaac. Is small supports enrolled on the requirement system for NHS commissioners who have to use this for all new requirements?
I mean, we're working within North East ICB, which is a 13 local authority ICB, so it's a very large ICB. Framework contract, which is 5 local authorities plus the ICB around that. To be honest, the issue about the commissioning isn't so much the technicality of it; it's the short notice. It's a short notice thinking that people are excessively reactive in commissioning, and coming too late in the process and want something by next week, next month, where in reality people have been in the system, stuck in assessment and treatment units, stuck in inappropriate placements, out of area, whatever, sometimes for years on end, and missed opportunities to do good work a long way upstream, as I would call it. Because if we need to get someone a house, we need to find them we need to recruit a team that matches them. None of that's going to happen overnight. So our model is distinctive and different, but the outcomes speak for themselves, I think. So I'm sure the ICB have a similar sort of acronym and something that's going, but the issue is around the thinking more than the process. The process, if we wanted to do that, we'd find a way through that. There's no issue, but we are on a joint contract as it stands.
Thanks, everybody. That was nicely wrapped up on time and lots of nods and appreciations. So we'll now be going into the most important section for me, really, is what does this all mean for people? So what do small support organisations or experiences mean for people? We've got Sam from Sea Change, Gillian and Debbie, who are family members, and we're going to spend the next 15 minutes really hearing what does this all mean for people. So Sam, can I welcome you in?
Hi, nice to meet everybody. I won't spend an awful lot of time talking because the most important people to hear from are Jill and Debbie. And one of the themes for us as an organisation is oftentimes families of loved ones, families of people who've been badly served by our system often find themselves gaining reputations themselves. So where people don't fit a system that really doesn't work very well, we tend to other people who either through their behaviour or through their advocacy for their loved one make people feel uncomfortable. And we hurt family members. We assign them with labels in the same way as we assign people with disabilities. And one of the things for us as an organisation is that we try to listen, we try to learn, we try to be humble, and we try to approach our work with uncertainty, because it's in that uncertain space about what you're doing that you're able to listen and learn and try and do better. One of the issues for me about understanding and knowing what good is we're surrounded by statutory blah-de-blahs. However, the only measure of whether we're doing well is whether the person that we work for thinks we're doing well, and or their family think we're doing well. So it is not something that you can tick off. You have to continuously work at it each day with each person, getting it wrong, trying harder, doing better, and that's the job. So with that in mind, we have two wonderful people who've given their time to speak with you today. This is not about, this is an unfinished project. This is a work in progress always, with the organisation's support to Jill and Debbie and Ross and Shannon. And hopefully what you'll hear in our conversation is their lives are different, their support is different, their experience is different, because that's kind of the point. So maybe with that, I'll just ask a question, then I'll over to you guys, because I know you can both speak so eloquently about your experience. But just in order of Jill, then Debbie, do you want to give a kind of brief how did you stumble across us as an organization, and why and what?
Right. I'll go first. I will try and keep it brief. I'm not renowned for it. I met Sam. Oh, Sam, it must be more than 20 years ago now. My son was 5 years old. I was doing partners in policy making. Sam came to speak to us. We were the third cohort in Scotland. Such a privilege. I learned so much. And I met Sam. And what Sam spoke about, I didn't believe was possible. I wanted it, but I couldn't see it. Everyone I knew out with of partners went, no, you're mad, it'll never work, blah, blah, blah. But Ross was only 5 years old, so there was scope. Moving forward 12 years, our paths crossed again, thanks to a very enlightened social worker. Sam ended up sitting in my living room, having a chat with me. Again, what I wanted for Ross, what I thought Ross wanted, was against what probably the rest of my family thought was the right thing to do. But I am nothing if not stubborn. He's my boy, so it was my way or the highway. Yeah, we stuck with it. We went through a transition process. The same enlightened social worker gave us the opportunity to interview 4 organisations to see who would support Ross. It was Sea Change. It's a great long story about why my decisions were made, but it's all about ethos. Yeah, we've been working for Ross for the last 7.5 years, nearly 8 years, Sam. It's been very rocky at times. But we've got there, and we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it's not a quick fix. Sometimes it's not easy, especially if your son's as opinionated as his mother, But we're getting there. And one of the things, and I'm not soft soaping Sam by any manner of means, she'll know that this is genuine. One of the things I love about Ross having Sea Change work for him is that they work for the family as well. And I get included by Sea Change and stuff that helps me cope away from Ross. Yeah, I'm not going to say any more because I could witter on endlessly. But yeah, it's the initial impact that meeting someone makes on you that influences your decisions way down the line, And when someone's values and ethics stand true, they stick with you. So well done, Sam.
Love and appreciation. So shall we move over to Debbie? Is that okay?
I may not be as eloquent as Jill. So sorry. I'm pretty new to this. Shannon became involved with Sea Change last year, and it was a sliding door moments, as I would like to call it. I work in the Golden Jubilee Hospital. I'm not going to say what department because it might. So I met someone who worked for Sea Change, and I actually got speaking to them, and I asked them if I could speak about my daughter, and she asked me to email her. I emailed her that night, and she put me in contact with Nicola Bennett. And Nicola Bennett was nothing short of amazing. She knew her stuff, this girl. She really knew her stuff. And Shannon is 32 years old now, and we have been fighting for Shannon since she was 18. Since, well, 19, she left Kersland School and went into day centres, and she'd been let down badly by social work, to say the least. And it was a struggle for the family. It'd always been a struggle. And then, as I said, we've been through different organisations who, you know, between social work and I'm not going to name the organisations, obviously, because it's not right to. Well, I would like to, but at the end of the day, it's past and past now. We're still dealing with things like this just now, anyway. But Shannon has been badly let down a lot of her life, and we, as a really caring family, have been there for her all the time. And it always makes me wonder why, you know, if someone's that doesn't have a family as close as us, where would they be? Because the system is so wrong. It's so wrong in a lot of aspects. But going back to Sea Change last year, we've been let down by a lot of places, as I said, and we just came across this Sea Change, and we were put in touch, and it was really quite swift. And before you know it, I'd introduced them to social work, and I had a previous care provider who wasn't doing, they could talk the talk but couldn't walk the walk at all. Seen there, been there, done it all the time. And Sea Change were just honestly nothing short of amazing. I couldn't, I've never experienced this in my life, and I just wish my husband was here just now to actually sit here with me and go over it, because he's so passionate about it. I've never seen a company that does what they say they're going to do. Never. In all the time that since Shannon's became, you know, out there in the world of past school age and things like that, because it's very hard when you become an adult. But as I said, now Shannon, we got the house for sale. We couldn't get council housing and things like that because our needs were being met. Shannon's needs were being met, sorry, because she was in a loving family, blah, blah, blah. But we've got to remember that we're getting older too. We're getting older. We're not always going to be here. So I want to be able to see my daughter happy and thriving and wherever she is. And I don't want to leave it to my other two daughters either, because they've got a life too. And basically, we managed to get her a mid-market rent flat. She is loving it. She loves makeup. She loves dolls. She loves going out, singing, dancing, swimming, everything else. And Sea Change have made that happen for us. They are consistent in what they do with every part of planning that they do. They've got everything all sorted. They know all the policies, everything else that I've never ever experienced before with different care providers. They've never been able to show anything up front. And as I said, it's just, I can't explain how fantastic they are, honestly. And moving forward, my daughter is thriving 12 months later. She's now goes on a bus now, where she never used to do anything but cars. She swims. She goes away up to Glasgow, where I'd be panicking before that she wasn't with me, because she was always for me. She still is for me, but it's only to get her own gains. She only wants me to get dolls or mummy's coming, mummy's coming. That's all she wants. But when she gets it, and I've ordered it off of eBay, bye bye, mummy. Cheerio. She's quite happy with her support staff, which is great, and that's great for me, because at the end of the day, I have now started to get somewhat of a life. Me and my husband, he's coming up for 60, I'm 55, and honestly, I had Shannon every day for 31 years, and it's quite draining. as a family member, as a family, people will know. It's when they're looking at you all the time, mummy, mummy, mummy. And, you know, I've had a lot of wee mental breakdowns and things like that as well, as is her and other family members as well, because of the situation. Social work didn't make it any better. We're still fighting so much just now. But that's another story, and it's more time. But as I said, it's...
Sorry, I was just going to say, Debbie, because certainly the sense was you speak about fighting, and Jill also kind of, whilst you had a good and supportive social worker, is that battle that families feel they have to undertake to ensure that the things that you're looking for your loved ones are you know, respected and protected. And some of the issue is how people begin to get spoken about. So the things that were being said about Shannon, that as you say, in a year's time, she's, you know, she's doing all of, you know, she's college, and she's doing all the things that she wanted to do. So it wasn't really about Shannon at all. In the same way as it wasn't about Ross, really.
No,
at all.
It definitely never ever was, and I'm fighting that cause right now with my MP and everything again. So basically, it's not about Shannon, as we said before, and I reiterated to social work. You keep saying it's about the person. It's person-centred. It's not person-centred, because everything that I have tried before has never worked. And social work keep coming back and trying to put my daughter into a pigeonhole with other people and putting her into supported accommodation. So it gives, you know, less money, less budget. You know, we're still fighting the budget. It's not this just now, it's ridiculous. But the bottom line is, I know social work have got their own financial things going on and blah, 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 but I'm not there to, that's not my job. My job's there for my daughter. And my job is to make sure that she gets the best life that she can ever get. It's not her fault she's disabled. She never asked to be disabled. She would love a job. She can't get a job. If she could get a job, she'd work at McDonald's. She would eat all their burgers probably. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. We just need to be there to support her all the time, and I will die trying, because right now we're not out of the woods just yet. But so far, Sea Change has changed how I feel about everything. When I've been let down for so long, all these years with my daughter, and I can't thank these sliding door moments for a minute. I really can't. And I could go on and on and on, but I know time's essence and everything else.
Thank you.
And can I just say that, because this is, this feels quite uncomfortable actually for me. I'm so pleased to hear what you're saying, but I think we're also, the organisation is given credit for things that are not extraordinary. They shouldn't be extraordinary. It shouldn't be extraordinary to listen to families and to listen to individuals and to plan with people. One of the things we do every year, every person is afforded the opportunity, not everyone wants to take it up, to plan, so they direct their support. So, and that planning is done in whatever way makes sense for that person. It will be different for Ross than it is for Shannon, but then we know what that person wants to do, and then we know what our job is to help them achieve that. And I don't think that's extraordinary. And in that respect, I don't think we should be lauded for it. But I know it doesn't happen. And every person can inform how they want to be supported. It's up to us to work out how to do that. And if we can't do that, we shouldn't be doing the job. So whilst it's made my heart burst hearing, I also think that, you know, you listen to Debbie and you listen to Jill and you think, how could we get it so wrong when they're so clear about what they want? It astounds me.
I think as well, I was just at a planning meeting with Shannon just last week, the week before. I'd only ever been to one before, and there was all these people in the room from varying degrees of, from the support workers or people we support, or all these various names that people use, in the politics list. But we've got them, we've got the management, we've got the area managers, we've got the hierarchy, we've got everything. We're all in the same room for Shannon last year, and it was quite overwhelming. But now this year that I knew what I was going into, my husband couldn't come, but Shannon was there, and it was all about her, and our support workers were there, management were there, area managers, and we could all see what we wanted, what the vision we wanted for Shannon, and she could speak for herself. She doesn't communicate a lot or anything like that, but she just knows, the girl knows what she wants. And when they were saying about 2026, what Shannon's goals, what would you like? And my daughter's always loved our day centre. Previously, she used to work, used to be in an intensive support service in Gateway in Paisley, and they were the most amazing council run place for people with severe, behavioural, all that kind of stuff. And Shannon excelled there and stayed there for 8 years until she had to leave because we thought we had a place for her somewhere, which didn't turn out good. However, we've never had this kind of thing before, never ever. Nobody's ever really asked our opinion. It's always been what they want, and it's all to do with money as normal, never about the individual. And I know at the end of the day, everything's money nowadays, but we need to look at the individual person because it's about them. It's not about us. We're just, as parents, we want the best for our children, but everybody needs to start listening. And I know, as I said, social work's got their own finance thing, but they are not listening. They are not listening at all. And I'm not going to stop until we get what we want for our daughter. And in terms of sea change, yes, it's great. Social work, no, it's not. And I'll take it as high as I can go. Because I'm 55 now and I've had my daughter for 32 years, and I just feel all I've done is fight, cry, break down, everything else. I'm not etiquette on, I'm not a speaker, I'm not anything, I'm just a normal parent. But I'm just so passionate about my daughter. We all love our kids and everything else, but when they've got that wee bit extra that they need to be dealing with, then we need to be supported. I feel as if people with disabilities are not being supported. They're not being supported by they say it's about, oh, we need to care for these people, that we need to care for people that have nothing. No, they don't. They don't. So, but that's another politics. Sorry, just bounce back into everything here, but it just angers me, and I just want to help others because I just think of my daughter and I look at people who have nothing and nobody to advocate for themselves, and I just think, I would love to do that kind of thing if I had the buzzwords and the normal and could talk normal, like, and great, and we're a people speaker. I'm just not. I'm not that way at all. I'm just a normal parent, but I feel for the people who don't have anyone.
You're an extraordinary parent who's fought for your daughter. So I just genuinely think you shouldn't underestimate, and your passion speaks volumes today for other people to hear. What sacrifice and effort families have to make to ensure their loved ones are well supported.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to say that I would welcome you on my team anytime, and you don't need those big fancy words, like the passion really shone through. So what I just wanted to encourage people to remind to really look after ourselves, because we've shared a lot about our personal. Sam, I want you to feel the love. There was lots of love for Sea Change there, and that thing around social care and social services not listening. I think many of us have had that experience, and these lived experience and family experiences are really important. So well done, Gillian. Thank you, Debbie, and Sam. Thank you for your contributions. We're going to now move on to the next section, which is really another kind of area I think that's really important. So we've got Mike that's going to be looking at an in-depth evaluation of what we've learned so far around small support organisations of approaches. I know it's going to be a bit of a tag between Mike and Nick, but really excited to hear the next contribution. So Mike, are you ready? And that, yeah, brilliant.
I am indeed.
Thanks, Mike. I just say I can see your slides and I'll hand over to you now.
Lovely. Nick, do you want to kick us off, or shall I just jump straight in?
Jump straight in, Mike.
Excellent. Well, Joe, it was nice to hear Isaac say to look after. So it's really powerful stuff, and I've been privileged to be involved in this. And I reread the report that we did for Plymouth this morning, and it's just full of the most powerful stories. So before, and I will finish with this same sentiment, but I'm going to start with the sentiment of which we are truly grateful for the people who shared their stories with us, that allowed us to understand some of the not really hidden, overlooked value within this work. And Debbie, you've really made me think about how I'm gonna form and phrase my my presentation here. But it's when Debbie was around. No, it's brilliant. Thank you. When you were saying about,
I'll just let it go over my head, right?
No.
Just do that.
Good. It's fabulous, because you said something about, like, well, social work have their kind of financial rules, and the truth is, a lot of organizations do work within a kind of a financial storyline that's around service cost, about counting outputs, not outcomes, about budget control, about efficiency of process, and about short-term savings. And I'm afraid that's kind of like their logical boundary about success and about what counts. And it doesn't count. When you measure what matters, you have to think about the human impact of the system. You have to look at the ripple effects, and you have to look at the wider economic returns, not just simply about the cost efficiency. How much would it cost me to get what I want out of this? But when I invest in something, what do I get back for it? And that's hopefully the story that I want to share with you today. So apologies that it's sliding a bit chalky talky, but strap yourselves in. If you like numbers, you're going to love this. And if you like stories, I hope you like it too. Okay, so the first thing, what have we learned? What have we learned? Well, within the Plymouth report, we spoke to 9 people and the members of their families and trusted people around them. And we started to look at the how their lives had changed within small sports, and there was a wonderful story of improvement in well-being. And we're talking about control, we're talking about safety, we're talking about connection, we're talking about people living their lives, and under the broad banner of well-being, we can understand that. We can understand that there has been a change because of the change in their life circumstances, and we measured that. And it's a very simple scale, just for those of you who want to use it, borrow it, nick it, use it yourselves in any kind of work that you want. There's a kind of a measurement called the WellBe. And the WellBe is a well-being adjusted life year, and it measures how people's life satisfaction improves. But the kicker about this measurement is it's got Treasury kind of stamped approval, is that every one of these movements generates an economic value. There is a story of economics within the lives that we lead. And you'll know on a very personal level, you will know that when things are going well for you, how you're more able to cope, how you're more able to function, how you're more productive, how you can care for those that you need a bit better, how you can how potentially you may not go to the GP or need your medicines or whatever so much in a world where you are better prepared and better looked after. And all of that kind of understanding of that, and not just you, actually, the people who care for you are in a better place, and that if you're doing all right, they're doing all right too. So it's not just about how those that value is seen within one individual, but how it has that ripple effect to those people around them. And that has got, like I say, it's got a great big stamp of approval, that the Treasury understand it and they use it. And at the moment, well, actually, it's slightly higher than about £15,000 per point per person on this scale at the moment. But at the time that we did the report, it was around £14,000 per person. So we can understand when we ask people about their well-being in the broader sense, that we can see that shift in movement. And goodness me, was there a shift in movement? I mean, we were talking about 9 people who were in some of the most troubling circumstances, for whom social care and support had not delivered for many, many years. And it was the small supports approach that had allowed those people to start to take control and start to live their lives in the best way. And it was an amazing shift. So we were able to put a value on that. Okay, so I'm not going to stay in the world of numbers. I want to talk to you a little bit about the human impact. I've taken some of their stories here and brought them out for you. But Claire, one of the people there, from moving from a 2 to a 10, she, again, Debbie, also Sam, reflecting on what you'd said earlier about people and their reputations and how people have been described. Described as an aggressive individual who'd been through 18 different institutions before finally kind of landing in small supports environment. Described as being happy, settled, able to enjoy her life. She's traveling. Her story was one of getting back into education from an individual who was quite sadly bouncing around the system and had been labelled and given a reputation which clearly was undeserved. We spoke to Lisa and her mum, both, again, huge changes in where they were to where they ended up within small sports. Lisa had been placed within a secure hospital 600 miles from her home. I think that's right. I was rereading it this morning. I'm thinking, where on earth did we put her? But this was incredible. So we moved from that situation, from being hosted, being in care far, far away, back to her own home. She is now able to live her own social life, to invite people into her home, to be a host, and as herself start to advocate for self-directed care. Again, another description here of Sam. Previously described as a monster. These are the words within the stories that we were given. Who was they described themselves as isolated and distrustful of people and the services. Now a sociable, independent person. We looked, and I'll explain this in the next part, about kind of some of the fiscal costs of not just the well-being cost, but the fiscal cost. But Sam's health improved massively from a number of seizures that had left them hospitalized into virtually disappearing those symptoms, and being able to manage their health and well-being far, far more successfully. And Danny, who was in various, again, kind of accrued a reputation. We spoke to them about their previous involvement with other services, community mental health, police and criminal justice and health services. And we looked at what had gone on in the year coming up to their move into small supports. And we were able to look at the fiscal costs of what had happened in the year before and in the years following. And we were able to calculate the difference in Danny's life in terms of their well-being, but also the difference for all of the services around Danny. Hugely powerful stories. So better lives, lower costs across the system. So we looked at the fiscal cost. We worked with a database of kind of fiscal costs of, there's about just shy of 800 separate kind of fiscal events in there, everything from the positive benefits of education or the disbenefits of crime, social care, health, environment. We were able to use the fiscal cost of these events. So when we speak to people and we did that evaluation, we talked about a number of those events, but you can see that we were reducing significantly the costs to police, health, criminal justice, a significant saving across the group. Claire's costs, Danny's costs, Sam's costs, both not only in terms of their generated well-being to themselves, but because of that well-being, because they were valued, because their lives had moved to a better position, the kind of the ripple effects and the knock-on effects of how they were managing that situation and how that was kind of manifesting itself within behaviors, and then the responses to behaviors, they disappeared as well. Care costs, previous total care. I mean, there's a little shift here. In fact, in all but one, so 8 of the 9, the actual costs of care. So we can even go back to an old world view of cost efficiency. Can we do this for less money? Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. In one instance, there was a rise of in care costs, but in that case, it was where an individual had moved into more independent living. So they had moved from institutionalized care into their own home, and there were significant costs around that, but it was one of the 9, and that doesn't stop you accruing the other benefits. Generating independence for people and helping them value their lives gave a number of other benefits. But yeah, generally the budget around these costs, and over the 9, it fell. £229,000 savings per annum for this group, and say that cost only rose where independent increased. So yeah, okay. I don't really know how to. I'd love a pithy kind of punchline on this, but I don't really know if I can come up with one. In a way, I think some of the stories that we've heard are around. I mean, there is that phrase, and it's not universally applicable. That kind of hurt people. That isn't always true, absolutely. But people who are not valued, and people who are ignored, and people who are run roughshod over, generally, it does not work well for them. Actually, valued people, and in this case, everybody felt valued. They were worked with in a way that saw their intrinsic value and worked with it. And I'm moving that word value away from costs and away from economics. I'm talking about valuing people. In that sense, valued people, they create so much more value, that you can do things better with them. They live their lives better. It is very, very important that we move away from old thinking to this new thinking, and these hidden stroke overlooked costs and benefits are brought to the fore. So dramatic improvements of well-being, major reductions in the use of other services, comparable in most cases, or lower care costs for those 9 people, for 8 of the 9 people. Futures reclaimed. And I'm going to say, it isn't about saving money. That isn't the primary purpose. It's about people living good lives, but you can have them both. If you start with the person and value them, you can generate those kind of values and efficiencies. So yeah, just to kind of formally record this, we were the we were entrusted with these stories. We were given them. They were shared with us by people and their families, and they were powerful. And actually, they had quite a profound effect on the team that worked with these with these families and with these individuals. So it is a huge thanks, and a thanks to Beyond Limits, who facilitated these. That's me done.
Thanks, Mike. Lots of information, and it's really great that you could share that. So we started off today with really how this all started. Then we went into that kind of like, what is it all about? And then we went into that space of really thinking about that person or experience from family members to individual organizations like Sea Change. And then that really important thing that Mike's talking about is, where's the evidence, where's the evaluation of this? And it really does work. So yeah, so we've had Sally and colleagues, everyone here today, really because I think we all believe in this. We've got an opportunity to have a bit of a discussion for about 20 minutes. We'll do a nice wrap up at the end, and I'm going to open the floor. So does anybody have any reflections on any of the presentations? Nick?
I kind of it's just a chance. I don't often get a chance to ask Sally and I guess who's speaking with her team in mind at NHS England, that when we didn't have that all we had some of this evidence when you guys got started talking with Bill, but we didn't have the evidence from Beyond Limits. So what's it like, kind of, I knew there was something in this and we were right to invest in this. So
Absolutely. I'm really sad. I get so excited by that presentation and those numbers, and it's so lovely to see. And I think what is really good is it's taken a while to collect this intelligence and information, but it's so powerful. And I think it's the demonstration that it does work. Actually, it's a really good approach, and it's good. Primarily, it's good for people, which is the really important thing. But we've got to live in a very practical, real world, and hearing from people today, when they speak about money, pound notes, it's the world we live in. So when we have this sort of intelligence and information, it's so powerful. And I think for me, as well as obviously saving money on individual sort of care costs, it's that systemic thing. So you're able to look at the police, you look at education, all the other things, local systems, and how it impacts the criminal justice system. So it's really good in terms of the impact it has for wider society and the wider systems in which we live. So it's amazing, and it's amazing that this has all been brought together.
And thank you for your contributions earlier. They were really powerful as well. So as Sam's demonstrating, please do pop your hands up or pop some questions in the chat. Sam, can I come to you next, please?
Yeah. I think the financial evidence is really important, but Sea Change was set up on the basis that good support should cost no more and should ideally cost less than poor supports that harm people. And that it's to debunk, to challenge this notion that people necessarily want more. Because our system is so perversely set up that families have to fight to get what they need and want. And because families have to fight, then we have gatekeepers saying, no, you can't have. And then we end up in this strange kind of adversarial system. Whereas actually, if we recognize that individuals and families want no more than what they need, because more support than you need is not better. You just ask anybody who's followed around by 3 people because someone's said 1 support is what you need, whether they really like having 3 Velcro buddies. They don't. What they want is to live a good life with the right amount of support for that to happen. And we get ourselves all caught up in 5-to-1 support and 3-to-1 support and not recognise that that's just a symptom of how dysfunctionally bad we have been at recognising people's distress and working out how to do better. Happier people require less support. Miserable people are the folk you're pinning down. So the money is really important. But it should be used as a catalyst for a better life, and the better life requires oftentimes less support. But man, do we get ourselves locked into an odd fight dance about how much we'll spend to do awful stuff rather than spending enough to do great work.
So Mike, I'm going to go to you, and then we're going to go back to just scanning the chat. There's a couple of questions in there. So Sam, if you pop your hand down, I'll go to Mike, and then we'll go to the chat.
Yeah, just really to come back to that, it's really powerful, Sam. And I think from what we learned from that evaluation, and a little bit to reflect on what you said earlier around it's not extraordinary what you do. Actually, I sense it is a little bit extraordinary because it isn't usual and it isn't done way very often. But the benefits we saw were about people living their good life, and care and support was the vehicle for that. It wasn't the end, it was the means to that end. And it was only through, and let's go back to Dave's point earlier around kind of person-centered approaches, none of it would have been possible. If it was care focused, I don't think we'd have seen anything like that return, because what we got, we saw the value of people's, to use that lovely phrase, like gloriously ordinary life. It was made possible by the approaches that were taken. It wasn't the care itself that made it possible. It was the lives that were being led as a result of the care. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think it's really important to realize that care is the means to the end. It isn't the end in itself.
Yeah, we all expression gloriously ordinary lives. Who wouldn't want that? So thanks, Mike. I'm going to go to Bill. I'm just going to read out a question and I'll come to you. So thank you for finding your hand and being so patient. So Louise is interested in knowing where small support is where small support is running. How did it start? Was it commissioner led, provider led, or people led, or something else? And Nick, I can see that you were the first to jump to that question.
I'll jump in, but I mean, there's lots of people who can answer that question. I think the roots of small support start with organisations like Sea Change and Inclusion Glasgow. In the original steps were when the Lennox Castle institution was closing down in the 1990s, early 2000s. Sea Change was a second organised small support to set up in 2002. So that's the roots, and it was basically because the support in the community didn't exist, so they needed to set up specific, more 24/7 support for people with more complicated support needs. So that was the roots of it. Now it's a case of NDTI support program working with local commissioners and others to set in motion a program of work where we find people and they kind of get involved and we support them to go live. So that's how it works now, and that's where the roots are.
And please don't worry if you're having hand troubles. I often have those. Sometimes they. Bill, I'm going to come to you, Bill.
Isaac, you're chairing beautifully. I think as I was listening, I just had a couple of comments for people in the room who are in commissioning or development roles that perhaps haven't come out so far. And I think for me, there's something about, I think it's really important to talk about the value for money here, because if we can show that small supports offer value for money, then we can show why they are worth investing in and why they provide such an incredibly strong structure for for people's futures. And I always reflect on the alternatives and who is funding the alternatives. And when you look at the big private care institutions, and we look at who is funding them, and they're being funded by hedge funds, and they're being funded by external pension funds who look for the best return on investments for their money. And we need to look at just how much money is leaving the system to go and fund those, to fund the owners of the private institutions. I think the other thing that it's really important for commissioners to hear is that in our experience, small supports offers the most stable outcome we could find for people with high support needs, people with intensive support needs. We met so many people when we began this piece of work who were part of the big institutions that kept changing hands. People closed a ward and everybody got chucked out. The big institutional providers offered almost no stability to people. Sam, I think I'm right in saying that Sea Change has been going for 30 years. I think Beyond Limits is 20-something years. Dave is 15-something years. And I think as providers, we absolutely need to recognize that we're talking about a group of people who need stability. we could not find a more stable source of support than these folk. Sorry, Sam, you're not 30 years old, but you're nearly there.
Yeah, just next year is our 25th year, and we're still supporting people that we supported as the first people we worked for. And they have people working with them in their team. I had a colleague who recently retired, literally a couple of weeks ago. He'd worked 13 years with a gentleman called Stephen. And Stephen was somebody who's had numerous services fail him. And one that was specifically designed. So there was a house with a number of people in it, and he was in this annex. And the idea being that people could kind of, if he got upset, people could kind of come from the main building into the annex. Well, being smarter than the average bear, he migrated into the main building because the fridge was bigger. Anyway, so the service, you know, let him down again, and he ended up in hospital, and we started working for him. But my colleague who retired the other week, after 13 years of working with him, retired from working with Stephen, who he loves. Not the big reputation, not the, you know, 5-man pin down. He's supported one-to-one, you know, with a small group of people who know him really well. So it's that idea of people's reputation. We don't forget the trauma that people have lived through, but neither do we drag it into our everyday working with people. We are working with people who they are. He loves the Territorial Army. He loves his chapel. You know, he loves the community in which he lives. That's how people talk about Stephen, not all of those other strange things.
Thanks, Sam. Lots and lots of thought-provoking conversation.
Most people who are doing things in a non-traditional way are just busy getting on with it and supporting people to have better lives. So as NDTI, we've gone into an informal partnership with Community Catalyst and Shared Lives Plus under the heading Better Now. And we're using the Better Now heading to try and share and reinforce the messages about small, micro provision, significantly supporting the quality of people's lives to change and supporting better financial decision making. Because one of the things we've absolutely learned, that if you're in an area that has micro provisions through Community Catalyst, you could use the same levers to have small supports. If you're in an area that has small supports, you could use the same lever to have micro provision. It's the system, when it bends once to allow creative things can happen, opens the door to more creative things happening. And we're really excited that we have colleagues from Wales on the call today, because there is so much conversation at the moment about that bend in Wales.
Thanks, Bill. And I'm just conscious that we've come to time as well. So I just wanted to say today has been a really great example of many heads together make lighter work, I think. And we've really heard those personal stories, those stories that can help us really think about it from the system perspective, the individual perspective, and how we can really start to think about those small shifts that create the opportunity for people to have really good support. I've popped in the chat, please. We've shared a lot about our own living experiences. Please do look after ourselves. I wish you all a lovely afternoon. We will be sharing the recording, and we encourage you to kind of get in contact or touch if you want to update us with any information, and we'll ask you to share the recording as well. So we want people to know about this because it's really important.
A big thank you to Isaac for your very professional sharing. Really, really good. Thank you very much for your time today, and a massively powerful conversation.